Hello, world. Welcome to Nerd of the Word. When I was a kid and learning the Old Testament in like the 3rd and 4th grade, my teacher skipped over the more inappropriate passages, And as a 7-year-old, I kind of appreciate it, but I don't appreciate it so much more now that I'm 22 and teachers still don't talk about those passages. I know we were supposed to go over Ezekiel 23 today, but I don't think it's really worth our time, so we'll just skip to Ezekiel chapter 24, guys. I mean, come on, man. Teach me the Bible. I'm 22 years old and married. I think I can handle this stuff. Because you probably have the same feelings that I do, and you haven't heard much on the end of Genesis chapter 19, I'm going to list 6 different things in the book of Genesis that, your preacher or pastor hasn't gone over. Number 1. Ham sees his daddy in his birthday suit. Noah, a man of the soil, was the first to plant a vineyard. He drank some of the wine and became drunk, and he lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backwards and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. Okay, so Ham walked in on his dad sleeping in the buff. What's the big deal about it? Why did he have to have his kid cursed for that? Some scholars point to Leviticus 20:17 to try to help out with this passage. If a man takes his sister, a daughter of his father, or a daughter of his mother, and sees her nakedness, and she sees his nakedness, it is a disgrace, and they shall be cut off in the sight of their people. He has uncovered his sister's nakedness, and he shall be subject to punishment. Obviously, these 2 people are not just standing there looking at each other naked. They're doing something. So if we applied this to the Noah passage, whenever Ham saw his father's nakedness, maybe he did a little bit more than just look at his father. Some commentators suggest castration, some other form of molestation or sexual abuse. But the fact still remains that Ham's sin is contrasted with his brothers clothing their father with a sheet. What would clothing their father have to do with anything that had to do with a sexual sin of some sort? Ham's sin is much more likely to be that he just told his brothers about his father being naked, and that was shameful to his father, instead of going out and helping his father and putting something on him like his brothers did. So it was because Ham dishonored his father and shamed his father that his son, Canaan, was cursed. And also notice that Canaan is who the Israelites, the readers of this book, are going to be up against whenever they go into the land of Canaan. Imagine what this would mean to the Israelite readers as they're going up to the land of Canaan, about to conquer it, knowing that the people they're going against are a cursed people. I mean, if this were me, I'd be really encouraged by those words. Numero dos, Lot's daughters. So Sodom and Gomorrah were just destroyed, and Lot's wife had just turned into a pillar of salt. So now it's just Lot left with his daughters in this cave. And his daughters get the idea, we have no husband. Let's get impregnated by our dad so we can carry on our offspring. How about it, sis? So they get their dad drunk 2 nights in a row. One daughter lays with him one night, one daughter the other. And 9 months later, out pops Ben-Ami in Moab. That's messed up. So Lot gets something from the same 2 kids on both Father's Day and Grandparents' Day. Ben-Ami and Moab are both half-brothers, cousins, and each other's uncles. And yet again, this probably would have been encouraging to the Israelites, knowing that the people you're going to go up against came out of an incestuous relationship. Aritmas tres, dem thighs. So Abraham's getting old and he's like, well, I better hook my son up with a wife sooner before I die. So he goes and calls his servant to him and says to him, put your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I live. This may seem a little strange, but it gets a lot more strange when you realize that Abraham's asking him to grab his genitals.
Young man, come over here and put your hand under my thigh.
Okay, Abraham, that seems a little weird, but it's easy enough.
That's not what I meant. I meant this.
No way, dude. We know that thigh is symbolic for genitalia because of verses like Exodus chapter 1:5, which says that these are the sons of Jacob that came from his thigh. The significance of swearing on someone's thigh is not really known to scholars. Some say he's trying to make him swear on his future lineage, which makes sense because he's making his servant swear to find a wife for his son Isaac so that he can continue his family line. Whatever this means, it's still pretty weird, but cool. Number 4. Behold Leah. So Jacob just worked for 7 years in order to marry the love of his life, Rachel. And so he finally, after those 7 years of hard work, he's able to marry her. So he marries her and they have this great wedding, and then they go on their honeymoon. They finally get to be together. The next morning, he's feeling refreshed. He's excited to see his wife in the morning light coming through the window. And behold Leah. It's hilarious. I mean, Jacob has worked for this girl for 7 years. He finally gets to marry her. And he finally gets to sleep with her. And then it ends up being Rachel's not as attractive sister in the bed next to him. I mean, dude, how do you not know this isn't the girl you've been spending time with the past 7 years? But I mean, if anyone deserves it, it's Jacob. It's the same guy who manipulated his brother into selling him the birthright for a pot of stew, and the same guy who ended up tricking his blind father into giving him the blessing instead of his brother Esau. Poor Leah. Number 5. Onan spills his seeds. So Jacob's son Judah had 3 sons of his own, Onan, and Shelah. And Judah got his son a wife named Tamar. But was a bad guy, so the Lord killed him, and it was the custom of the time that whenever your brother died, you ended up marrying his wife if you didn't have kids yourself. So the purpose of this was to have kids for your brother to carry on his line, even though he was dead. So Onan ended up marrying Tamar, but he said, I don't want to have his kids. So this is what Genesis said he did because of that. But since Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, he spilled his semen on the ground whenever he went into his brother's wife, so that he would not give offspring to his brother. Yeah, the Bible really says that. And because Onan acts dishonorably and does not fulfill his duty as a brother-in-law, the Lord strikes him dead too. So that means that Tamar has to go to yet the other brother, Shelah. However, Shelah's not old enough yet. And that's not the craziest thing that happens in this chapter, and I really suggest that you read the rest of Genesis 38. And last but not least, number 6, laughing in Genesis. In Genesis chapter 21, Isaac was born and was weaned, and then verse 9 says, But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. And Sarah gets super ticked off at this and ends up kicking Hagar and Ishmael out of the house. This seems to be quite an overreaction. Even if Ishmael was mocking her son, why do they deserve to be kicked out of the house because of that? Well, if you do a Hebrew word study on the word for laughing in Genesis, you might actually understand what Sarah actually saw. Later in Genesis chapter 26, Isaac and Rebekah are in Gerar, and he tells his wife to lie and say that she's a sister so that Abimelech won't kill him. However, something happened that made him realize they aren't brother and sister. And when they had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out the window and saw Isaac laughing with Rebekah his wife. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, Behold, she is your wife. How then could you say, She is my sister? Now when have you ever seen 2 people laughing together and assumed, oh, they must be married because they're laughing together? So the ESV's translation of this isn't very good, even though it is using the same Hebrew word for laughing that it was back whenever we were talking about Isaac and Ishmael. A better translation of this would be the NRSV, which says that Isaac was fondling his wife. Learning the sexual connotations of this word laughing helps us understand other places where it's used in Genesis. A clear example of this is in Genesis 39 when Joseph is being accused of rape by Potiphar's wife, when she says, See, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. So if you understand the word laughing here with the sexual connotation, what she's really saying is that you brought this man among us in order to fondle us. So going back to the Isaac and Ishmael passage, maybe we can see why Sarah was so upset with what she saw. Maybe she didn't just see Ishmael laughing at Isaac, maybe she saw him in some way molesting him. So while these are not all the sexual references in Genesis, I hope you've benefited from our study today. I know that probably most of these passages don't get really talked about in any sort of detail because they make us so uncomfortable because they're so weird. We really should start reading our Bibles as more than just a children's book or the VBS stories that we had when we were little kids. The Bible has adult content in it. It's not just meant for kids, it's meant for adults. So let's stop censoring the Bible, because God thought to put these things in our Bibles for a reason. If you found this video beneficial, don't forget to like and subscribe, and also to share it with your friends. Until next time.